So as someone whose writing has been published in a good amount of literary journals and magazines in the past 5 years, I decided that today I'm going to let you all in on a little secret. Don't tell anyone. But also like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends as well as your extended family members, because the algorithm is beating my ass a little bit. Gotta give it to her, she's a fighter. So what secret is this, you might be asking? Is it the meaning of art, the definition of poetry? Why younger me ever thought it was a good idea to format a poem this way? No, I don't know the answer to any of those questions, actually. Today, I'm going to be letting you all in on my very specific step-by-step process of submitting my writing to magazines and journals. I like to think of this as a secret sauce, if you will, the recipe for which I've developed over the past 5 years of publishing. This can apply to poets and prose writers alike, so if you want to see your work published, this video is for you. It is by no means the only correct way of submitting your work, and it does not guarantee an acceptance. It's simply what I've found to be the most efficient and effective strategy after a lot of trial and error. A lot. Welcome back to my channel, and if you are new here, hi, my name is Danae Young, and I'm a chronic poet. Thanks for your condolences. I'm published in around 45 different magazines and journals. If you want to know more about my publishing experiences thus far, I did make a whole video on kind of everything I've learned from every physical book that I've been published in. But today we're not discriminating, okay? We're gonna be looking at some online journals, some printed magazines, maybe even some anthologies, if we're feeling wild, crazy, and unhinged.
Okay.
So just as some context, after publishing a lot between the years of 2020 and 2023, I decided to kind of shift gears and focus more on producing more work and looking for MFA programs. And so publishing kind of took a back seat. So this will be kind of fun, I think. I'll be introducing you all to my process while kind of reintroducing it to myself. You'll get to see me hop back on that bike, or whatever that metaphor is. So luckily, the first step in my process is the most exciting one, and it starts with a little site called Duotrope. For those of you who don't know, Duotrope is one of multiple online databases filled with lit mags and journals. It's essentially a virtual mall where writers go to shop for possible publications instead of, you know, handbags, Chanel, or watches. Now, there are other databases like poetsandwriters.org or Chill Subs that also work for this and are completely free. I've linked them down in the description. But the reason Duotrope is my bias, despite the $5 a month fee, is because it doesn't just list the name of the magazine, it gives you an entire breakdown of things like when the submission period starts and ends, when the magazine was founded, possible payment quotes, and sometimes even graphics of their acceptance rates. Though this is admittedly only trustworthy if they have enough data points to back it up. The fee is worth it for me as someone who submits frequently, but as I mentioned, this process also works great with the other sites. So I screen captured myself doing this whole process, and I'm basically going to narrate over this to explain each step. So when I open up Duotrope, I go to the top left corner up here, and this will bring me to my filter page, where I can basically choose these different filters for the types of publications that I'm looking for. The other sites that I mentioned have a similar filter feature, but a little bit less detailed than Duotrope. Now, I like to leave my searches here very open. I've submitted to more established journals as well as like newer magazines that I see potential in. My decision to submit somewhere comes down to a few key factors that we'll kind of get into soon, but for now, I usually put the following filters. For the submission type, I choose electronic in the drop-down menu there, and then I also check that little box that says simultaneous submissions. On the right side here, you can also select a minimum payment that you'd want to receive for your publication if you're trying to become, you know, the first rich poet ever in existence. There's also a whole separate page of the filter here where you can ask to only see writing competitions, to only see fledglings, which are newly established mags, and a bunch of other options, or inversely to specifically exclude these listings. For this example, I'm going to exclude competitions and look specifically only at publications. On the other options tab, you can even set a range for the acceptance rates that you're going for. Now I can see all of these results ordered alphabetically. There is an option if I go back to the filter page to organize them from high acceptance rate to low acceptance rate. If I'm looking for a publication that is more approachable, maybe I'm, you know, newly entering the publication world and I want something that is more likely to accept my writing, you can definitely do that on Duotrope. And you see, this is why Duotrope is an icon, is a legend, and is the moment. You see the vision, I'm sure. And I basically just go through and click on titles that stand out to me. Okay, so now we can talk about what makes me decide to submit somewhere. One immediate thing is first impression. Is the website or publication well put together? Apart from a general, vague desire to be published, do I get excited about the idea of my work being on this specific website? So I kind of go through and look for that feeling of excitement. I'll skip skip forward to the moment when I find one. Here's one that I found that was established in 2020, so it has some amount of backing to it. It is a UK publication, and I always love the idea of like publishing internationally, so that's great. If I scroll down here, I can also see that its main focus is poetry that is kind of centering around fantasy, horror, and science fiction. And while I wouldn't say the majority of my work falls within these categories, I'm always looking for new types of magazines and journals to appear in, and I haven't really been published in a magazine that is more fantasy based. Also, I can think of some pieces that would probably fit the bill for that. So when I click on their website, the second key factor that I'm going to look at is what kind of work have they previously accepted? Can I see my own writing fitting in here? I do also take a look at the bios of the authors that they're publishing as well, though this, I admit, can be a slippery slope, and you don't really want to spend a ton of time comparing others' publication history to your own. The reason I look at this is because it can give me a better understanding of whether a publication is even open to publishing an author that doesn't have, 3 full-length collections, is published in the Paris Review, and is practically Ocean Vuong. In which case, I typically don't submit to those. I'm just not really there in my career yet. As I'm looking at the type of writing that they publish, I'm keeping a little checklist in my head of patterns that I notice. Is there a certain style that these editors gravitate towards? Do they favor more narrative, prosaic poetry or more abstract, figurative language in their poetry? Do they seem to have a soft spot for any particular themes like identity-based poetry or pastoral poetry? Or is it a smorgasbord of everything in the kitchen sink? So in this publication, it seems like they fuck with shorter, more simplistic poetry as well as longer, more layered poetry. But a common pattern that I'm also seeing is that a lot of these accepted pieces have some aspect of magical realism in them, where the metaphors are used to compare magic and fantasy to some aspect of the human condition.
What I'm trying to get at here is that while it's clear that this publication wants poetry with a fantasy or science fiction bend, you want to look more specifically at how loosely they interpret fantasy, and is there a common function that it's serving in the writing they publish? Here, I noticed the editors usually gravitate towards scenes depicted with beautiful fantasy-adjacent imagery that ultimately are references, comparisons, and/or metaphors for real-life scenarios. Now, their prose pieces may be a more literal take on fantasy and sci-fi storytelling, but this is what they seem to be publishing in poetry.
So here comes step 3 of my literary sleuthing, which is reading their about page, as there could be even more information here to give you a stronger understanding of what work they're looking for. So on this website, it reads, "Seeking the wonderful and the bizarre, the beautiful and the dark. Crow and Cross Keys is an online literary journal that plucks fiction and poetry from skeletal trees and gives it a place to take root. We love writing that sings, strong, unexpected imagery, lyrical prose, and an after-image that lasts long after the lights go out. Crow and Cross Keys seeks to be a haven for all things speculative. Give us your fairy tales and your fables, sneak a scary story under the mat, share us poetry that whispers and shouts, and demand to be heard over the din of the wind." All right, here comes my second favorite part, which is that I take all the information that I've gathered as the master detective that I am. I open up a document for the submission, list my main takeaways regarding what they're looking for, along with the number of poems they allow me to submit, which is listed on their submission guidelines page. And then I choose from a list of all my recent original unpublished poems, which is in another document that I keep in my Google Drive at all times and am constantly updating. And I choose the ones that I think fit these descriptions the best. Who are the best candidates for the job? This doesn't mean you write and turn in a copy of something they've already published. You're basically just making an informed decision based on writing that you already have in front of you. So here are the titles of poems I've written in the past few months. The ones highlighted are ready to be sent out and don't need further revision. And then these up here are older titles that I'd also be down to send out. Here are the poems that I think will maximize my chances of getting accepted. I can't show any of them on screen because that would disqualify them from being submitted to publishers, but if they do get accepted at some point, I will definitely leave their links down in the description of one of my videos. But hopefully you get the idea. Now I just quickly decide what order I want these poems to appear in my manuscript. This, to my understanding, doesn't matter too much, but I do want to put a certified banger at the start because, So next is what I like to call the big bad, and that is submission guidelines. Now there is a part of me that really despises submission guidelines. Just a little part. It's not that serious or anything. It's just the more that I read them, the more I feel like I'm either going to nod off into a coma or self-implode. I just have a growing beef with Times New Roman 12-point font, okay, because of how many times I've been forced to read those series of words.
No! God, please, no! No! No!
But it's just a necessary evil of submissions, unfortunately, and it is really, really important. Okay, editors are very specific about spacing, font, and formatting, which is hilarious because part of the point of poetry is to like play and challenge those rules, but I digress. Remember to also turn in the right kind of document. I prefer PDFs, but some editors will only accept Word documents, and they will specify this in their guidelines. So here I've formatted everything accordingly, titled the document accordingly, and...
What the hell?
Okay, pause. So remember how I said that the order doesn't matter too much? Well, I actually forgot to mention another piece of advice that I have about that. Sometimes when I'm feeling brave, I like to sneak a risky little number into my submission. And by this, I mean something that is wildly unexpected and pretty much has a 50-50 chance of them either loving it or automatically disqualifying it. This could be something that has a more bizarre interpretation of their theme, or something that is formally experimental, a poem that's really strange in its construction or looks unusual. For this submission, I had a visual erasure poem that actually fit their folktale theme, so I decided to include that. Notice how this appears toward the end of the manuscript. Now, even if you aren't doing something like this, I'd suggest if you do want to take an inherent risk with one of your pieces, put it somewhere in the second half of the document. That way, by the time the editor reaches it, you've already kind of built a trust between them and your manuscript. So if the risk doesn't pay off with that particular piece, it won't cloud the editor's experience of reading your entire manuscript. And of course, make sure that anything you turn in isn't directly against anything stated in their submission guidelines.
The final step is the cover letter. This is the part that I ended up losing the most time on unnecessarily when I started sending my work out. That was before I realized I could cheat the system and simply copy and paste the same cover letter and bio for every submission, just to insert the specific titles of the poems that I'm submitting.
Nobody's gonna know. Nobody's gonna know.
They're gonna know.
Now, these types of cover letters are not like job cover letters. They're very brief, but there are some essential things that you'll want to include. You can find a bunch of information on writing lit mag cover letters online, but if you want me to make a separate little video kind of going over how I wrote the template that I now use for all of my submissions, please give this video a like or comment down below that you're interested, and I'll gladly do that as a follow-up.
Now notice how I'm putting all of this into an email. The vast majority of lit mags these days receive their submissions either through email or through Submittable, which is a free submission platform for writers. You'll definitely want to get a Submittable account. Submittable to the publishing industry is like the lowercase I to Instapoets, okay? They can't live without it.
Okay. Now your submission is ready to send in. It may seem like this process would take a long time per submission, but I promise once you get into the rhythm of it and get used to it, it will go by a lot quicker than you think. And you can even do the whole second half of it, formatting it and copy and pasting your bio and cover letter while multitasking. A lot of times I'll listen to a podcast or even casually watch a TV show while doing this because it's pretty mindless work once you get the hang of it. Okay, now what's next? Oh, right, we wait a year for them to respond. Don't let long wait times discourage you. I promise if you just start submitting a lot, you're going to start hearing back from places pretty frequently and you won't feel like you're in limbo. Whatever you do, do not put your eggs in one basket and wait around for one specific publication to get back to you. This is not the time for monogamy, okay? That is a recipe for disappointment. The vast majority of publications will allow you to slut it out and submit your work to multiple places at once. That's why I personally like to send my work out to a bunch of places, just kind of throw shit at the wall, and then immediately forget that I ever sent it in. That way in 6 months, when one of my many prospects finally accepts my work, I can just pretend like they scouted me out. Like, oh, what's your name again? Okay, well, I mean, if you really want to publish my work, then I'm sure we can make something happen. If you found this video helpful, consider liking and subscribing to support this new channel. I'd love to hear about people's experiences with publishing, as well as any questions that you might have. So leave that all down in the comments below, and I will see y'all next time.